I spent a fair amount of time trying to decide whether to include this story. The original contained some content that wouldn't be acceptable today, but that's always true with Twain. Ultimately, I decided that his very insightful view about the workings of the government bureaucracy resonates so much with a lot of the experience we have today, so I rewrote the offensive bits and focused on his particular brand of bashing the government. And I changed the focus at the end a little bit. This story is called The Facts in the Great Beef Contract. I here lay out as simply as possible what I know about a matter that has occupied the public, engendered ill feeling, and filled the newspapers with distorted statements. The truth of my account can be proved by examining government records on the matter. John Wilson Mackenzie of Rotterdam, New Jersey, contracted with the federal government on or about the 10th day of October, 1861, to deliver to General Sherman a total of 30 barrels of beef. He started after Sherman with the beef, but when he got to Washington, Sherman had gone to Manassas. Similarly, he followed Sherman, beef in tow, for months, always one step behind the great globe-trotting general. Stops along the way included Nashville, Chattanooga, and Atlanta, and then followed Sherman on his famous march to the sea. When he heard that Sherman had shipped out on the Quaker City, he followed on to the Holy Land, but when he arrived in Jerusalem, he found that Sherman had instead started for the Rocky Mountains. When he was within 4 miles of Sherman's headquarters there in the Rocky Mountains, he was attacked by bandits who got all but 1 barrel. Since Sherman's army captured the remaining barrel of beef, even in death, Mackenzie had partially fulfilled his contract. Before he died, in his journal, he bequeathed the contract to his son Bartholomew. The journal entry included a bill that listed 30 barrels of beef for $100 each, plus $14,000 in travel and transportation expenses, for a total fee to the government of $17,000. Then followed a series of short-term contract holders, each foreclosed on by the great leveler, death. Bartholomew, then William Martin, and Barker J. Allen, and a few others, and then a man named Vengeance Hopkins, who lasted 4 weeks and 2 days, the best time on record. The contract then passed to Hopkins' uncle, a man known as O.B. Joyful Johnson, whose last words were, "Why, don't weep for me. I'm willing to go." After 7 more died, the contract was finally passed along to me. I took the contract, along with the journal and bill, to the President of the United States. He said, "Well, sir, what can I do for you?" I said, "Sire, on about the 10th day of October, 1861, John Wilson contracted with the general government to furnish to General Sherman the sum of 30 barrels of beef." He stopped me there and dismissed me from his presence. Next day, I called on the Secretary of State, and when he asked why I was there, I said, "Well, Your Highness, on or about the 10th day of October, 1861, a contract for 13 barrels of beef—" "Wait a minute. This office has nothing to do with beef contracts." I bowed out and tried the Secretary of the Navy, but he said that he had nothing to do with contracts for beef or with General Sherman, and I began to think that there might just be some reluctance on the part of the government to actually pay for this beef. So I tried the Secretary of the Interior. "Your Eminence, on or about the 10th day of October, 1861... "That's enough, sir. I've heard of you, and you need to leave now. This department has nothing to do with Army food." I went away, determined to haunt them, to infest every department, harry every department head until the contract was settled. I'd collect the bill or fall as my predecessors had fallen, but I'd never quit trying. I assailed the Postmaster General, the Agriculture Department, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Patent Office. None of them were responsible for beef contracts. Finally, I went to the First Lord of the Treasury. I said, "Most noble and established Commissioner, on or about the 10th day of October. Well, I wondered when you'd make it here. You've gained quite a reputation. Go to the First Auditor of the Treasury." Finally, I was making some headway. I went to the first auditor, and he sent me to the second auditor. The third sent me to the first comptroller of the corned beef division. Then followed the claims department, the mislaid contracts department, and the office of dead reckoning. There was only one place left, the commissioner of odds and ends. Actually, it was his clerk, because the commissioner himself wasn't there. The office was filled with beautiful young ladies and well-favored young men writing in books and talking brightly to one another. It was clear as I approached the clerk's desk that he had his eye on one of the young ladies, and it was also clear that she returned the entrance. The young man glared at me over the tops of papers he was reading, and with a dismissive wave of his hand indicated that I should sit on the chair facing his desk. I sat there and waited in silence as he finished reading 2 more papers. When he finished, he yawned and asked me what I wanted. Renowned and honored assistant to the hopeless bureaucratic squash, on or about, "You're the beef contract guy, give me your papers." He took them, and for a long time he ransacked his odds and ends, finally finding the Northwest Passage of paperwork, the long-lost record of the beef contract. It was the rock upon which so many of my predecessors had run aground, and yet somehow I had survived and managed to encounter this, the Holy Grail. I reached out my hand to simply touch the elusive document, but he pulled it back, saying he had a few questions first. "Where is this John Wilson Mackenzie?" "Dead." "When did he die?" "He didn't die. He was killed by a bandit." "And what was the name of this bandit?" "How would I know?" "We must have his name. How did he kill Mackenzie?" "Stabbed him, I think." "You were not present at the time?" "No." "Do you have the knife?" Well, of course not." "Then how do you know that Mackenzie is dead?" "Well, certainly he died at the time, and I have every reason to believe that he has been dead ever since." "We must have proofs. If you can produce the bandit and the knife, then you can go before the Commission of Audit Claims with some hope of getting the bill under enough headway to allow your children to receive and enjoy the money. But the death must be proven, and also the connection you have to the alleged deceased to prove that you can rightfully exercise the claim. However, you should know that the government will never pay the transportation and traveling expense enumerated on the bill, or for the beef that was never actually delivered. It may possibly pay for the barrel of beef that the soldiers actually recovered, but not for the 29 barrels that the bandits got. So you're telling me that there is some possibility that I may recover a maximum of $100 after all Mackenzie's time and expenses, and after all the efforts I have spent to collect? Young man, why didn't the first comptroller of the corned beef division tell me this? Or the second? Or the third? Why didn't one of the 42 officials I spoke to put me out of my misery and stop me? None of them knew if your claim was genuine. Look, We do everything deliberately around here. We follow a very specific routine. It's very regular and slow, but it's also very certain. Yes, it's certain death. At least it has been to many before me who tried to get to the bottom of this matter. I'm beginning to wonder myself if simply coming into contract with this contract doesn't usher in the final journey in life. Look, young man, I see the way you're looking at that bright creature over there, the one with the gentle blue eyes and the ballpoint pens behind her ears. I see you wish to court her, to marry her, but you're poor. Here, take this contract as my gift to you, and my wishes that you have a long and happy life. Go, marry her, and be happy. With that, I left, and that's all I know about the great beef contract that's created so much talk in the community. I learned that the clerk I gave it to died, but nothing about the circumstances of his death. I only know that if a man lives long enough, he can trace a thing through the circumlocution offices of Washington, but I have no idea why anyone with his sanity intact would choose to do it.